Okay.
Good morning, everybody who's just joined. We will get underway pretty close to 10:30, everybody, so stay tuned. Good morning, everyone who has already joined. We're so happy to have you today, and we're going to get started pretty close to 10:30, so stay tuned. Good morning, everybody. We're going to get started in about 3 or 4 minutes, so stay tuned. Thanks for being here with us today. Good morning, all. Just wanted to let you know that we're going to get started in just a couple of minutes, so stay tuned and thanks for being here with us today. Good morning, everyone. It's 10:30. We're going to wait one more minute, let a few more people hop on, and so stay with us. We'll be right with you.
I am just a little technical issue going here right now, JJ. Give me just a second, and then
Okay,
I'll I
sure.
and then I'll get started.
Okay, great. Sounds good, Cindy. I'll leave it to you to kick us off.
Okay, good morning, everyone, or afternoon, depends on where you're joining us from. Um, we would like to welcome all of you caregivers and thank you for all you do for others. Every day, family caregivers assist their older parents, spouses, siblings, grandparents, and other loved ones so they can live independently in their homes where they want to be. AARP Colorado knows that the people who care for loved ones, friends, and neighbors are more than just caregivers. November is National Family Caregivers Month, if you weren't aware of that. And this National Family Caregivers Month, we're offering webinar workshops that can make the journey easier, as well as opportunities to get out and about, catch a movie with us, and even take in a museum visit at History Colorado. We will be putting a link in the chat that captures all of our National Family Caregivers Month events. So please be sure to check them out, and we will be putting that into the chat more than once in case you miss it. And so with that, I'm going to hand this over to JJ and she can get started.
Thank you so much, Cindy, and good morning and welcome to everyone. Yes, Caregiver Month is a very important month in my life. I try to take time to appreciate all those people who are caring for loved ones, as I did for my own family. So, welcome. Let's get underway. Let me introduce myself. But before I do that, I just want to thank all the wonderful folks at AARP who host me for these sessions. Oh, gosh, every couple of months or so. And I just feel at home with all of the people at AARP. It's my AARP is how I feel about it. So thank you for hosting me today, everyone. All right. I am JJ Jordan. I'm the volunteer chair for Dementia Friendly Denver/America, part of the Dementia Friendly America Network. And that program was introduced back in 2011. I'm sorry, yeah, 2015, I think we kicked off at the White House Conference on Aging. Our mission is to make communities more dementia friendly, to reduce the stigma about this topic, and improve the quality of life for all of those families who are living with some form of dementia. And you'll see the Alzheimer's Association logo on this first slide because they are national partners to Dementia Friendly America. And the other part of my philanthropic life, I served a 6-year term on their board of directors, and I'm currently their liaison to Capitol Hill. So I'm in Washington, D.C., talking to Congress a lot about research funding, etc. In case you're wondering why this is my passion and my second act of life, I will just explain that I was cooking along in corporate America when 3 of our 4 parents were diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. They lived for 16, 14, and 11 years with the disease. To say that it changed everything about our family would be a vast understatement. I hung in there for a few years and then reinvented myself in this field. So now everything I do, both professionally and philanthropically, is around the topic of Alzheimer's and dementia. So with that, everybody, I will just explain that today you're going to hear me use the term lovies for my own loved ones with a capital L out of affection. And we lost our last lovey to Alzheimer's 11 years ago. Sometimes people will say, aren't you glad to just be done with all this? And I'm like, oh no, I'm just warming up. I don't plan to rest, everybody, until we get this thing called dementia, particularly Alzheimer's disease, off the planet. We call today's session Alzheimer's Dementia 101 because we're going to cover every aspect of this topic today. Certainly, all the hope around it, research, treatment, new news on all of that, a bit about care today, of course, since it's Caregiver Month. And then our grand finale today will be the 10 real things we can all do to reduce our own risk for dementia. So stay tuned for that at the end. All right, everybody, just some quick housekeeping. We are going to save all of your wonderful questions to answer at the end, but please use the chat feature on this Zoom so you can capture your questions as we go along the way so you won't forget them. And then I want to make sure that you all know that you're going to have access to all of these slides today. When you get a thank you note for attending today, you're going to get 2 things. You're going to get a recording of today's presentation, and you're going to get the slides. So if I happen to go a little fast for some of you, I apologize. We have so much new news to cover with you today, but rest assured that there's no need to take a bunch of notes today because you're going to get the recording and you're going to get the slides later on. So relax, try to absorb as much as you can, and let's all try to learn something today about this very important topic. With that, everybody, it's not lost on me that this is a pretty intense subject. Some people are afraid to even be talking about that. And so I like to start where everybody else might wrap up, and that is with the hope and optimism in our field. I've been in this field now for over 20 years, everybody, and I can honestly say that I've never been more optimistic than I am as I'm speaking with you all this morning, that the breakthrough is right around the corner. And when that happens, by the way, I'm going to throw a party for the whole world, so you'll all be invited. Watch for your invitations. It's going to be a big moment. Why am I so optimistic? Well, you might not know we have a national Alzheimer's plan in the US that was written into law in 2011. Calls for treatment and prevention by 2025. Well, here we are about to wrap up this year up. And I think we can check that box off, and I'll explain more about that as we go today. We have to get this fixed, everybody. not just because of the heartache involved, which I can speak to from my personal experience, but because we're spending $384 billion with a B every year caring for people with various types of dementia. Currently, our budget through the National Institute of Health is $3.8 billion. When I first started going to Washington 16 years ago, we were getting $400 million a year. Now, listen, that's not lunch money, but look where we've come. This is what the scientific community says we need every year in order to get this problem solved. There's lots of state and federal legislation going around about the topic of dementia. And here in Colorado, for those of us, you who are live here in Colorado, I know we have people from all over the country today, but for those in Colorado, just know that your state is on it. I sit on the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment Alzheimer's Dementia Action Coalition, and we have spent about a year writing the state Alzheimer's plan, and we're year 3 of implementing that plan. So we are on it in the state of Colorado. All right, everybody, honestly, I've waited 20 years to be able to tell you that we now live in the era of treatment for Alzheimer's disease, and you're going to learn all about that today. There is so much going on that I couldn't possibly list all the wonderful clinical trials that are happening, but I will just tell you that CU Anschutz here in the Denver area is a mecca for some of these clinical trials. And I've listed on your screen today a couple of different ways, a phone number and an email for how you might investigate any of those clinical trials that you might be interested in. And here's something interesting. One thing I think you'll see for sure in the very near future is that instead of just getting a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, you're going to find out what type of Alzheimer's you have. Is it cholesterol related or blood sugar related, estrogen, or perhaps inflammation related? And this is very important science, everybody, because that's going to allow us to deliver very pinpoint precision care, patient-centered care based on what type of Alzheimer's someone has. So stay tuned for more news about that. More research in the news, everybody. You may have been hearing about blood tests recently. We're going to talk all about that today. Genes, genes, and more genes, everybody. 2022 was a big year because we found 33 more genes connected to Alzheimer's disease for a total of 100. Think of it as a jigsaw puzzle. We all know we can't solve those puzzles till we get every edge piece in place. We now have every edge piece. We can't see the picture clearly in the middle yet, but boy, are we getting close. And ladies, I will tease this now and tell you more later that women are more susceptible to Alzheimer's than gentlemen. And just last year in 2024, a gene was discovered called MGMT that stands for O6-methylguanine DNA methyltransferase. I just did that to impress you. Did it work? Okay, that's a mouthful, but at any rate, that gene was discovered and may very well reveal the reason for women being more susceptible. So stay tuned for more news on that. This next section, for time reasons, we don't have time to go through all of these. They're fascinating. Some of them sound a bit sci-fi, everybody, but the reason I leave them all on the screen is because I want you to leave today's session knowing that no stone is unturned. We're looking at everything. I'll just mention 2 or 3. You may have heard of CRISPR, where we're able now to go into the human genome or DNA and cut out mutant genes or disease-related genes. And it's getting a lot of buzz because of some amazing breakthroughs with sickle cell, and we're looking at it in the field of Alzheimer's as well. The shingles vaccine and certainly Ozempic, everybody's heard of Ozempic. Those two medications are being looked at for possible benefits to the brain as well. So stay tuned. Those are in clinical trials. The recent focus from the research sessions that I attend are really talking more and more about growing new brain cells to begin with, which is very exciting. So stay tuned there as well. And then the Alzheimer's Association is funding over 1,100 projects in over 50 countries. So lots going on around the world, dozens of countries, thousands of people working on this as we speak today. The future is so promising that there's starting to be a little bit of what I call intellectual banter. Um, I hear people saying, wow, when should we actually use the prevention word for dementia versus just reducing risk? And what about halting cognitive decline versus improving it versus perhaps reversing it altogether someday? When should we start predictive screening for people for dementia in their lifetimes? And then what about preventative medications for the asymptomatic people who seem perfectly well? At what point will that be available to us? These are very exciting prospects. Prevention, of course, is the long-term goal in general. And listen, everybody, I like the term solution better than cure anyway, because I think it's going to be a combination of the drug treatments we're working on and the lifestyle elements. Those are going to be those 10 things we talk about at the end to reduce our risk that we have some control over. All right, I think a great place to start is with typical age-related cognitive changes. Everything you see in white on this slide, not dementia. These are just things that happen to us as we get a little bit older. The takeaway on this slide is down at the bottom, and that is that dementia is not normal aging. Period. End of story. Now, someone will challenge me and say, yes, but my mother or my grandmother is 92. Isn't it normal at that age? And the answer is still no. More common at that age, but not normal aging. And that's why it's so important for us all to really understand this topic. On this slide, I've listed some conditions that can mimic dementia. And what I mean by that is that these things, while they're not dementia, they can cause people to be confused, delusionary, disoriented, if you will. Things like vitamin deficiencies. B12 comes up a lot here. It's not good to have too much B12 either, but a very severe deficiency can cause people to be confused. Brain tumors, you'd sure want to know about one of those, wouldn't you? And then metabolic disorders like hypothyroidism, infections. Ladies, we know a lot about urinary tract infections. Gentlemen, you get them too, but women more often. And left untreated, they can cause people to be very disoriented. And then sometimes it's just medication interactions. People have different doctors, they're not talking to one another. And when we get the medication straightened out, cognition returns to a baseline level. I'll let you read all those other things for yourself when you get these slides later on. And next, 30 seconds about something called mild cognitive impairment, MCI. You can actually get a diagnosis from a physician. So it's severe enough to show up on a cognitive test, but it's not severe enough to slow you down much in your daily life. It does, in fact, increase your risk for developing Alzheimer's disease down the line, but it doesn't guarantee it. So I think the takeaway on this slide is that if you hear the term MCI, report every cognitive change to your physician immediately, and you're going to want to double down on those 10 things we know we can do to reduce our risk. All right, let's dive in, everybody, and talk about understanding dementia. You notice I have it depicted under a purple umbrella, and that's because dementia is an umbrella term, much like the term cancer. I know you won't be surprised that there are over 100 kinds of cancer, also over 100 kinds of dementia. I've listed the most common types here, and we'll talk about each of those very briefly. The term dementia, to define it for you, is simply a loss of memory or other thinking capabilities or cognitive functions, if you will. The number one question that I get as I'm out giving about 100 of these talks free in our community every year is, what's the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's? Great question. And one simplified way of answering it is to say most everyone with full-blown Alzheimer's disease certainly has dementia, but not everyone with dementia has Alzheimer's, Alzheimer's being one type or one cause of dementia. Not only is it one type, but it is by far, everybody, the most common type. Don't worry, I'll interpret this very busy slide for all of you. It accounts for about 70% of all cases of Alzheimer's disease. Now, in case you all haven't caught on yet, I'm quite a nerd. Last year was a big year for a nerd like me because a brand new type of dementia was discovered called LATE, and that stands for limbic predominant age-related TDP-43 encephalopathy. Do I get a little silent clap, clap, everybody, for getting that one out today? That's a mouthful. But listen, that type of dementia involves the oldest of the older. So even if 5% of these 70% of cases are people over 90, and we thought, wow, they have very late onset Alzheimer's, and they really have this other kind instead, we're still talking about 65% of all cases. Little history lesson, okay, for everybody. I will tell you that Alzheimer's was discovered in 1906 by a German doctor, Dr. Alois Alzheimer. He was presented with a 51-year-old female. We refer to her respectfully just as Frau Auguste D. Her husband brought her to Dr. A's clinic complaining of irrational behaviors. You know what happened to you back then? Off to Bellevue for you. Dr. A wasn't buying it, so he took her into his care, and at her passing, he performed the first autopsy, discovering the disease we still know as Alzheimer's today. Now, I don't know about all of you, but as many times a week as I tell this story, I have the same reaction. 1906? Why are we still talking about this? How come it hasn't been fixed? It speaks to the complexity of Alzheimer's disease. It speaks to the complexity of our brains. But it was only around 1990 when the scientific community realized that younger onset Alzheimer's, that's anyone diagnosed under the age of 65, fortunately only 5% of all cases, and anyone over 65, all the same thing. So they thought, wow, we better get to work on this because with the aging demographics of this planet, we're going to have tens of millions of people with this disease, which is exactly what's happening. I think last week I checked 57 million on the planet is the official total. That's underreported because of some third world countries where we just can't get data. I need to explain to all of you that Alzheimer's is a brain disease. It is not a mental illness. Not that there should be any stigma about mental illness either, but that's another topic for another day. This is a disease just like cancer, cardiovascular disease, or diabetes. Alzheimer's is progressive. It's an gradual arc decline versus vascular dementia. We'll talk about that in a minute. That's more like stair steps, deeper dives, and longer plateaus. We know, everyone, that Alzheimer's can be dormant in our bodies for 10 to 20 plus years before any symptoms start to appear. So at my age, ladies and gentlemen, if I have Alzheimer's disease, I have it as I'm speaking with you today. Two hallmarks you should know about for Alzheimer's. These are brain proteins. Beta amyloid, plaque is the slang we use for those, and tau, T-A-U, we call those tangles. And one or both of those things must be in the brain to a toxic buildup level in order for a diagnosis of Alzheimer's to occur at this time. And I just want you all to know that we have got to stop thinking about this as a disease of aging. Because while it's not common, we certainly have seen the beginning of the buildup of those toxic brain proteins in brains as young as 35 or 40. So this is really a lifelong journey for brain health on everyone's part. You might not know that there is a direct correlation between Alzheimer's and Down syndrome. Everyone with Downs will have the pathology of Alzheimer's by around age 40. Many of those folks are now living into their 60s, and unfortunately, if they live long enough, they will develop, most likely 99% anyway, full-blown dementia. Now, you want the good news? They are fabulous, fabulous people. They want to be part of the solution. They make wonderful cohorts or participants in our clinical trials because they all have the pathology of the disease, so we can study them. 7.2 million Americans officially living with Alzheimer's. That's underreported. Those are the ones we know about. 1 in 7 of those people, everybody, live completely alone without a family care partner or a professional caregiver involved. That breaks my heart, everybody. 6th leading cause of death in our country, somebody being diagnosed every 60 seconds, and about 40% of us will have Alzheimer's past the age of 85. Now, I know these are kind of grim statistics, so would this be a good time for me to remind you all, with a smile on my face, we're going to get this fixed, everybody, sooner than many of you might ever imagine. I can't wait. When that happens, I'm also going to do my older adult version of a cartwheel. It won't be pretty, ladies and gentlemen, but it will be enthusiastic. You won't want to miss that. All right, everybody, let's talk more about Alzheimer's since it's so prevalent. The stages, early, middle, late, also known as mild, moderate, severe. Notice where driving is on this slide. It's in that first category because our peripheral vision, the ability to see out of the corners of our eyes, can be affected in the early stages of various types of dementia. The baby stroller is coming across the crosswalk from the side, everybody. Tragedies can certainly occur. Only a professional should make the call as to whether someone with suspected dementia, diagnosed or not, is still safe to be driving. Look where managing money is on this slide. I could tell you stories of families losing every financial asset down to the penny because nobody was paying attention in the early stages of someone's dementia. And it would be irresponsible of me not to mention that firearms just simply don't belong in the households of people with dementia. Moderate stage, more difficulty with language skills, keeping track of stuff, and grooming will start to slide. And then in the later severe stage, general confusion sets in. I will never forget the day my mother's neurologist, who's comfort caregiving, as communication may be very and care, of course, at that stage will be needed around the clock, everybody. All right, what's vascular dementia? Number 2 on the hit parade. This is when blood vessel blockages have occurred to our brains. Small strokes, we call them TIAs, or larger strokes, of course. And the size of those strokes, where they're located in the brain, the number of them that are happening will determine how much cognitive impairment is occurring. And then there's dementia with Lewy bodies. This one's in the Parkinson's family. So in addition to memory loss, you'll see more hallucinations, gait imbalance, sleep disturbances, and then there is Parkinson's related dementia. Unfortunately, around 80% of people with Parkinson's disease, if they live long enough with that disease, will develop dementia. And then there is frontotemporal dementia, FTD for short. This one's gotten a lot of buzz in the last year or two because of Bruce Willis's diagnosis. There are 2 types. First type is language related. That's the type he has. And then there's the other one is more behavior related. Not in every case, but in many cases more aggressive behaviors. So I'm always concerned about family care partner safety. A sense of apathy sets in, or a lack of empathy, if you will, and more obsessive compulsive behaviors. In my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, this is the most difficult type of dementia for a family to deal with. This is nerve cell damage in the frontal lobe of our brain, which is right here by our foreheads, and the temporal lobes above and slightly behind our ears. The symptoms generate at an earlier age than Alzheimer's, and the duration of living with this type of dementia is shorter. By the way, just FYI, average for Alzheimer's about a decade or so. And then, of course, you have families like mine, 16, 14, 11 years. Mixed dementia, more common than we ever thought. About 50% of our patients have more than one thing going on. And then at the bottom, particularly as they age, with vascular dementia sometimes being added. And then down at the bottom, I've listed some more sensational types of dementia. CTE is chronic traumatic encephalopathy, most commonly connected to contact sports like football and boxing. Creutzfeldt-Jakob, that's mad cow disease, everybody. Very unusual in the United States. I did see a family 5 years ago with this type of dementia, not from tainted meat. Their entire journey from discovery to death was about 3 months, went very quickly. And Wernicke-Korsakoff, everybody, that's alcoholism-related dementia, just so you know. All right, now we're going to talk about how our noggins work, everybody. Please do let me know if I'm impressing you with my medical jargon this morning. But at any rate, in our brains, we have about 100 billion nerve cells or neurons, and they're creating this branching neuron forest I'm showing you on the slide. I'm very careful never to bring a picture of the real human brain, everybody. It's quite gnarly. Most of these I do are lunch and learns. Some of you may be enjoying your lunch as we speak. It'll put you right off your salad, I'll tell you that for sure. But the synapses or signals are traveling through this neuron forest, and they're creating everything about us that's human. Our movements, our thoughts and feelings, emotions, certainly our memories. In the early stages of various types of dementia, there's just impairment. And something can happen that I nicknamed blue sky moments. Our dad in early middle stage Alzheimer's, on the way to the doctor in the car, recited to me the preamble to the Constitution. An hour later, he didn't know what a sweater was, much less where his sweater was. It really wreaks havoc with us because, as care partners, because we think, wow, everything was so perfectly normal there for a while. In the later stages of dementia, the neurons are actually destroyed and the brain actually shrinks or atrophies in physical size. Now, And we're going to switch gears, everybody, and talk about the 10 risk factors for dementia. Unfortunately, 2/3 of all Americans have at least one of these, and many have many more than that. So let's get started with these. Number one, primary risk factor for dementia is age, everybody. Not a doggone thing we can do about that one, right? And I don't know about you all, but I think I'm pretty safe saying this because AARP is my host this morning. I hope as all of everyone on this session today adopts my philosophy, and that is that I am way over apologizing for how old I am. I turned 73 back in May. I can't wait to get on with my life, but I'd sure like to get on with it without dementia. Are you with me, everybody? I know if I could see you all, you'd be nodding. So thank you for that. The number two risk factor, everybody, is your general health, your heart health. Oh, thanks. I see some thumbs up on the slide. So thank you for that. Listen, heart health, everybody, your cholesterol really matters here. And hypertension, that's your blood pressure, really matters in this category. Diabetes certainly increases your risk. Type 2 should be avoided if at all possible, and if not, well managed under the treatment of a physician. Neuroinflammation, inflammation to the brain, that one we're going to talk about a little bit later on, everybody. Number three is lifestyle factors. Inactivity, that's a lack of exercise, everyone. Poor diet, poor sleep habits and patterns. Obesity, certainly smoking anything, by the way, that goes through your cardiovascular system. Excessive alcohol use, and not treating hearing and sight decline as we age. That one is so, so important that it has its own section at the end. Ladies, as I teased earlier, we are at the epicenter of the entire topic. 2/3 of all Alzheimer's patients are female. I know what you're thinking. Look back to number one. We live longer than gentlemen do. That explains it. Well, that's part of it, but we know there's more to it than that. And that's why that gene that was just discovered last year is going to be so important to figuring it out and potentially getting a treatment just for females. Caregivers, 2/3 of all of those are also female for people with dementia. Now that we're in caregiver month, I want to point that out for sure. This next one is so important for me to convey. African Americans are twice as likely to develop dementia as others, and Latinos 1.5 times more at risk. So our outreach to those communities is extremely, extremely important. Number six is fascinating. A study was done a few years ago, 3 years ago, I think, introducing us to a term called life course factors. And what this tells us is that some of our risk for dementia may have been cast as long ago as our childhoods, particularly through the nutrition we might have experienced. Now, this doesn't bode well for me, everyone. I was born next door in the state of Kansas to a mother who never met a food she couldn't fry. My goodness, I think we ate fried foods 3 times a day back then. Were you raised in a rural or an urban environment, and what might that have meant to the quality of the health care you received as an adolescent? What are your formal education levels throughout your life? And look at this one: poverty, stress, discrimination, risk factors for dementia. Social isolation certainly increases risk. I was very worried about this during the pandemic years. Most of us did a pretty good job of staying connected through this thing called Zoom that we now can't live without. But there were many people truly tucked away. And I will just say that it will be decades, I'm sure, before we fully understand the ramifications of the coronavirus pandemic on our brains in general and our risk for dementia down the line. I will just mention that those studies were started within 30 days of the pandemic being identified back in late 2019. Traumatic brain injury certainly increases our risk. We'll talk more about that one later. Not done with the gene category yet. There's a deterministic mutant gene, everybody, so rare that only 200 families on the whole planet have this gene. You might wonder why I'm even mentioning it because it's so rare, but this is an interesting story because there's a wonderful family in Colombia, part of a clinical trial we have going on down there. And there is a gentleman in that family. What it means, by the way, to have this gene is that most everyone in the family will develop an Alzheimer's type dementia by 40, 50, or 60 years of age. And there's a gentleman exactly my age, you guys, 73 years old. He's just now beginning to have a little forgetfulness, and he has the mutant gene. So what's been protecting his brain all this time? They found it last year. It's called the renin protein, and it resides in the RLE in DNA of our genome. That's big science, everybody. So stay tuned to what that means for the rest of us. That study is going on right now. The gene I want to talk more about today is a risk gene called ApoE4. Now, we could go to a lab or get a kit and find out if we have 1 or 2 copies of this risk gene, which increases our risk for Alzheimer's disease. Nobody's recommending that you go do that, because if you do have 1 or 2 copies, it doesn't guarantee you're going to get Alzheimer's. And if you have 0 copies, you're certainly not off the hook. 1 copy means a 3 times higher risk, by the way, for Alzheimer's, and 2 copies, we call those dual carriers. 60% of those folks will have Alzheimer's by 85. That's only 2 to 3% of folks in the United States, by the way, so it's pretty rare. So I just want you to understand that genes do play a big part in all of this. Now look at number 10, family history. Some people will say, wait a minute, what's the difference between number 9 and number 10? Well, genes are genes, everybody. You're born with them. But family history really matters because families tend to do what? They have the same lifestyle habits. They eat the same thing for dinner every night, and they either go for that walk after dinner or they don't. So I think with regards to numbers 9 and 10 on this slide, I'll just say this: the more people in your immediate family who have some form of dementia, the more you should be paying attention to the entire topic. All right, next we're going to switch gears again, everybody, and talk about the 10 warning signs for dementia. Promise me this, everybody, that you won't leave today's session being what I call the worried well. I know what you're going to do. You're going to say, wow, I've done that, I've done that, I've done that. Of course you. So I will just, sounds like we're recording and it's stopping every once in a while, no big deal. I think it's being recorded again, so we're good, everybody. Anyway, I just wanted you to know that we brought everybody over from Kansas to care for them. Last trip over before the move, I walked into Elsie's kitchen. There were Post-it notes on every cabinet, canister, and drawer. This is a woman who knew her way around her kitchen, so we knew that things were a bit more serious than we had even suspected. Number 2, changes in problem solving or planning. I think you've all heard of ambrosia salad. It's sweet. It's got marshmallow, pineapple, coconut. There were cherry tomatoes in the ambrosia salad one Sunday dinner. By the way, that's nasty, so don't try that at home. But we looked at each other like, wow, something's really up with mom. Number 3, difficulty completing familiar tasks. A gentleman told me that his dad had been playing a game of pickup basketball at one of the city rec centers every Saturday morning for the past 20 years. He called his son and said, son, I can't find the rec center this morning. So his familiar path was no longer familiar. Number 4, confusion with time or place. I went to pick up our dad at his assisted living community one July. It was very hot, everybody, pushing 100 degrees. He had on his heavy coat and boots for me when I got there, not realizing what season it was. Number 5, we've already talked a little bit about visual issues, peripheral vision. I've already mentioned judging distance is very difficult for people with dementia, making that driving thing even more hazardous, of course. And then contrast can be a real issue. Our dad was not a vegetable dude, everybody. He hated vegetables. And if I would hand him a white dinner plate with a slice of turkey breast, some mashed potatoes, a dinner roll, and green beans, he would only eat the green beans. Well, I knew something was terribly wrong. He didn't see the rest of the food on the plate. So we had light-colored foods, plates for dark-colored food, dark-colored plates for light-colored foods. I think you get it. So he could enjoy a more varied menu. I bet there isn't a one of us on the session today who hasn't said, what's the word? What's the word? But as cognitive thinkers, we just reach up and grab another word from our vast vocabulary that means the same thing. Drag it down, nobody's the wiser. Our lovies won't be able to pick up the pieces and rejoin those situations. Anybody ever lost anything on the session today? Yep, and you shall again. The way I describe it is that if you find the keys in the pocket of the jacket you wore yesterday, relax. If you find them in the freezer, that could be cause for concern because that's not typically where keys hang out. I think you get it. Anybody ever made a poor decision on the call today? Well, don't start with me. I've made some doozies throughout my life, but I will just share with you that unscrupulous telemarketers are the bane of our existence in my line of work. They will prey on people with dementia. And I don't have to tell this very esteemed group from AARP how absolutely rampant and disgusting elder fraud and abuse is in our country. It's not always cynical, or sinister rather. I will just share with you that our sweet Elsie loved the color pink, and back when she was still able to order from a catalog, she'd order a pink sweater and 5 more would show up. Well, that's because of her memory loss. Easy enough to deal with, but in many cases they were of the finest cashmere, way out of our family's budget because she had really failed to understand the value of money before we got a handle on all that. Number 9, withdrawal from work or social activities. I was just giving this talk at a huge company in downtown Denver the other day. And a gentleman came up afterwards and said, "Could I have a private moment with you, please? I'm in big trouble. I was embarrassingly late to an early morning meeting at my company because I didn't recognize the plaza out in front of the building as I was walking across the street from the parking structure. I think my boss is starting to catch on." And by the way, I just want you all to know that that gentleman is getting all the help he can possibly get from the fabulous people at the Alzheimer's Association. I think of myself as the town crier, everybody. I will literally be out. This is a big day for me. I'll literally be out doing another one of these at 2 o'clock this afternoon. So even if you never see me again, we want to make sure that you understand how to get all the resources that you need free in our community for a journey with dementia for your family. And there'll be an entire slide at the end of this presentation on that you'll have to keep when the slides are sent to you. Okay, number 10, everybody. I take a deep breath before I go here. I can't look at this slide even after 11 years. It upsets me too much, everybody, to think that this is what my loved ones had to endure during their journey with dementia. You'd think I'd toughen up, but I don't think it's going to happen, everybody. Anyway, I'm not talking about crankiness, you kids get off my lawn kind of stuff. I'm talking about true departures from the baseline mood and personality of those people we love the most. So for my sake, we're going to get off of that slide really quickly. Sorry. What should you do if you see any of these 10 signs? Whether it's one or more, I implore you to go make a doctor appointment and find out what's going on, everybody. Getting the right care up front is so crucial, especially these days that now that we live in the era of treatment for Alzheimer's disease. Those treatments right now are for early stage only. So no procrastination about this because a window might close while you're just thinking about finding out what's happening. And if this is a loved one, you're going to have that dreaded initial conversation. I hope you never have to have it, but if you do, I've made a cheat sheet for you. You got to select the right person to communicate. Pick the right place and time. I'll just tell you it's always on their turf in the mid-morning sweet spot when our lovies are at their freshest. You got to adopt the right tone, everybody. I never once used the A word for Alzheimer's or the D word for dementia. I said, "Mom, I've noticed you have a pesky memory lately. Let's talk about that." By the way, if it goes badly, time out, call it, and try again on a completely different day. You're not going to be piecing that back together, trust me. All of these tactics are to get that doctor visit scheduled, and your loved one may want no part of this. Our dad did not want to go. So this is what I did. I said, "Dad, I found a new doctor, but I'm scared to go by myself the first time. Would you go with me?" And he said, "Sure, honey, I'll go with you." Well, of course, it was his new neurologist that I had found that we were going to visit. And I know to some of you that may sound manipulative. You know what it sounds like to me, everybody? It sounds like love to me. We got him on some medication, got him under the care of a good physician, and started our journey properly. All of this is to get the most specific diagnosis also for what kind of cognitive symptoms the person is having. Speaking of which, good segue, huh, everybody? But we're going to spend the next few minutes talking about how to get a diagnosis, how to find out what's happening. Do not procrastinate. I cannot talk to you about this enough. First of all, because of what I just mentioned with the early stage drugs now and or treatments. And then we don't have enough neurologists in this country, and so it may take a while to get that appointment. So you don't want to fool around and think about it for too long. Make the appointment. And by the way, people will say, "Oh, we're good. We love our family doctor. We've been with him for a long time. We're okay." If someone in your family had cancer, I think you would be seeking out an oncologist pretty quickly. And these are our brains, everybody. So I hope everybody takes this very seriously to get the right kind of medical attention. In 2025, only 50% of people with dementia are getting a formal diagnosis, and that is just ridiculous. No longer do we have to wait till an autopsy. I'll explain that in a minute. And look at this statistic. This is unbelievable. 82% of us over the age of 65 believe that our memory should be evaluated every single year. Only 20% of us are getting the job done. Now, look, if you're over 65, more than likely you're on Medicare, and as such, you get a free annual wellness visit, and that includes a free cognitive assessment. I'll be honest with you, some doctors may not offer it up to save some time, so ask for it. That way, you'll be establishing a baseline for your cognitive health, just like everything below the neck. Very, very important. The number one reason you want to go find out what's going on if you detect some cognitive decline is it might not be Alzheimer's or dementia at all. Do you remember the size of the list I showed you at the very beginning? I think there were a dozen things listed that it could be. Some of those very serious, needing immediate attention. So it's important not to make any assumptions or to be in denial. Number two reason, if this is your family's destiny, as it was for the Jordan family, my family, you got a lot of work to do. I don't know about you, but I've had very meaningful discussions with my husband and my immediate family about my wishes for care. Lots of legal and financial matters to think about early on. And by the way, I'm very careful not to give medical, legal, or financial advice from my imaginary podium. I meant to go to law school and med school, but I forgot, everybody. A little humor there. But I'm going to break my own rule and give you some legal advice. Are you ready? Do your paperwork, your durable medical and financial powers of attorney, your wills and your living wills. And that way, if things get hairy in your family, as they did in mine, at least all those things will be in place. You got to prepare early for safety, particularly that driving thing where catastrophes can certainly occur, tragedies. You got to build the right care team as early as possible. And of course, I want to select who has my proxy, if you will, to make decisions if I'm not able to make them someday. And if I haven't convinced you all yet, I got 5 more opportunities. In just a few minutes, we're going to talk about the 10 things that we can all do to reduce our own risk for dementia. These lifestyle changes, I'm not kidding you. I hope you'll all embrace them the minute you leave this session today. But getting an early diagnosis will certainly turn your head around and cause you to buckle down on these kinds of things that might affect the progression of whatever type of dementia you may have. And now that we live in the era of treatment, again, I mentioned there for early stage only. So if you're in denial about this, you might be denying your loved ones some time-sensitive and valuable treatments. For years now, we've had some symptom relieving drug therapies. I'll tell you about those in a few minutes, and they work better the earlier you start taking them. Next reason, keeps people independent longer. How does that work? Well, listen, I'm sure you're not stunned that diabetes is rampant in the United States. I think mostly due to our diet. And if you have diabetes and memory loss, are you going to remember to take your diabetes medicine? Probably not. So that way your physician can assign somebody to you to make sure you're taking all the medications that are going to keep you in the best possible health. This is important to number 4 because we know we can prevent up to a quarter of all hospitalizations of people with dementia simply through early detection and diagnosis, everybody. And I can just tell you from experience that an acute care experience is extremely overwhelming for everyone in the family with a person with dementia. Not to mention, think of the cost we could save on this one, fiscal health of our healthcare system. Very important. And if I haven't convinced you yet, the neuroscientists and the neurologists that I hang out with every single week of my life would never forgive me for explaining that the earlier you find out what's going on with cognition, the more eligible you will be for clinical trials. We need you. We need healthy people. We need people all along the way. And I've listed a couple of ways to check out those trials. Don't worry, you're not signing up anybody for a trial right off the bat. You're just exploring and putting information into a pool. You'll have plenty of opportunity to talk live with your physician and the study physicians to make an informed decision later on. Speaking of physicians, my favorite people on the planet are geriatricians and neurologists. Geriatricians take care of those of us over 65. You want the bad news, everybody? In the state of Colorado, my state, only 96 of them. So if you have young people in your families who are thinking of going into medicine, please convince them to go into geriatrics. We need them. Neurologists are the big brain men and women who are going to figure this out for the rest of us. I'll just explain that doctors who have experience in this field can get you about a 75% accurate diagnosis just in an office visit by ruling things in or out. But one thing for sure is they can see enough red flags to know that they may need to refer you on for advanced testing or more care. And you can certainly get these referrals from your physician, your primary care physician, or specialist lists are available from the Alzheimer's Association helpline. I've listed that number. You'll see it again later. But here's the situation, everybody. We need to have screening for dementia at the primary care physician level. There just aren't enough specialists to go around. And one of the ways we're going to do that is through blood tests. So hold that thought. We're going to be back to talking about blood tests, the very latest, in just a couple of slides. In the meantime, here's what that office visit may look like. Make sure that a knowledgeable informant goes along. You can't drop your levy off. They're poor medical historians because of their memory loss. So we have to be there to interpret and translate. Bring all the medications. My doctor friends tell me that they'd like to see them in the original packaging so they can see brand and dosage. Everything counts. They'll take a look at everything. And speaking of medications, there's a class of drugs called anticholinergics. Many of these are over-the-counter sleep aids, antihistamines, or muscle relaxants, and they may, in fact, increase the risk for Alzheimer's disease in older adults over the age of 60. So, again, I'm not dispensing medical advice, but that's what pharmacists are for. What we don't want you to do is walk willy-nilly into a pharmacy and pluck something off a shelf, particularly if you're going to take it for a longer period of time. That might fall into this risk category. So tell the pharmacist what's going on and get their recommendations. Talk to your own physician to avoid that kind of risk. Steps in the assessment looks a lot like an annual physical, doesn't it, everybody? Particularly number 5 down there, all those tests will be done. Mental and psych evaluations, interviews with families, and cognitive testing will occur to check it out as we're trying to figure out what's going on. And the last 10 years have been amazing, everybody, with regard to breakthroughs in diagnostics. And while there's not a single diagnostic test for Alzheimer's, we now have many ways to get to the bottom of things. There's something called a biomarker. You may have heard that term, and here's how I explain it. Measuring your cholesterol is a biomarker for cardiovascular disease, as measuring your blank is for Alzheimer's. And we now know 2 of those markers are beta amyloid and tau buildup in the brain. How do you do that? Well, PET scans have been around forever, right, everybody? But in the last few years, a couple of geniuses have created a PET scan, one for measuring beta amyloid, one for measuring tau in living brains. No longer do we wait till an autopsy. Now, nobody's recommending that you go out and sign up for one of these pets. They can be extremely expensive, $10,000 to $15,000, and they're only paid for through insurance or Medicare, Medicaid, for diagnostic purposes, not for preventive purposes. So we don't just run out and get one to see what's up. There's a better way anyway, everybody, because that can be done through biofluid analysis. That's cerebrospinal fluid through a lumbar puncture. And I know that sounds painful, but I've had one recently. They've come a long way, everybody. And then this is pretty interesting, and that is there's an emerging field of ophthalmology where we are looking behind the eyeball at the blood vessels. The retina is part of the brain, by the way, not the eyeball. How cool will it be someday, everybody, if we just get our annual Alzheimer's test when we go in for our annual eye exam? Very exciting to think about. Artificial intelligence is playing a huge role in our field, everybody. Research, I'm not kidding you, what might have taken us 10 years, very laborious work in a laboratory. I mean, seriously, warp speed now, happening over the weekend kind of thing. So that's very positive, and same with diagnostics. I'm sure there will be a lot of controversy as things unfold about privacy, etc. It'll be fascinating to watch all of that as it progresses. Now, I just want to let you know that the biggest breakthrough I can tell you about for 2025 is news about blood tests, everybody. 2 of them have been approved just this year. The first one was approved back in the summertime. It's from a laboratory or a company called Fuji Rebio. That's a Japanese company. And the test is called Lumipulse. 92% accurate for measuring amyloid in the brain. It is not a preventative test at this time, so it must require a doctor's diagnostic order. In other words, if someone is showing signs of cognitive decline, then a doctor can write an order for this test to be covered on a diagnostic basis. And then just about 1 month ago, honestly, 1 month ago, Roche was approved by the FDA for Alexis. And this is a plasma test that rules out amyloid in the brain. And so the cool thing about this one is, so if you don't have that amyloid, it's like, okay, well, you don't have Alzheimer's disease, but you still might have a different kind of dementia, but at least we're not going to attempt to put you on an Alzheimer's drug and waste money or whatever. So it's very helpful, everybody, at preventing unnecessary kinds of things. And the beautiful thing about these drug tests is that they will be able to be administered at the primary care physician level, so we can find out what's going on and avoid people going to a neurologist just for a B12 deficiency. So this is really huge news, everybody. I'm very excited about it. All right, for years now, we've had some symptom medications. We had great luck with these with 2 of our 3 lovies. And I won't impress you trying to pronounce all these drugs for you today. You can read about them later, but the disclaimer in the middle tells you that these are not treatments. They do not slow or stop dementia. They just relieve some symptoms for some people for some period of time. One thing I'll tell you for sure I want to mention is that they should never be suddenly discontinued. That should be a tapered discontinuance under the care of a physician. And then, and again, I'm not dispensing medical advice. We just want you to know these drugs exist so that you can have an intelligent conversation with your physician about whether or not they'd be appropriate for your loved one. The FDA did us a very solid favor last year, everybody, by approving 2 drugs already on the market. Rexulti is now approved for dementia-related agitation, and Somstra is now approved for dementia-related insomnia. These are 2 of the most difficult symptoms for family care partners to deal with. So that has been very, very helpful. All right. I've waited 20 years to be able to share this slide, everybody. We now live in the era of treatment for Alzheimer's disease. And year before last, lecanemab was approved, a 27% slowing of decline. Last year, donanemab was approved, a 35% slowing of decline. We're going in the right direction. And the cool thing about that trial was that almost 50% of the people had no further decline in year 1 of the clinical trial. I'm not exactly sure what we call that, everybody, but it sure is progress. And I will tell you that now that these drugs have been out for a couple of years, we're continuing to study sustained utilization of them. And are the benefits going to prove to be even more effective the longer a person is on them? So stay tuned. These are for reducing amyloid beta, not tau, Alzheimer's disease only, not the other types of dementia. 40% of people will have some side effects that can be fairly serious, like brain bleeding and swelling. Most of those dissipate in 6 to 8 weeks, but a physician will determine whether or not you are qualified for the drug based on what you have and whether or not you're healthy enough to take the drug. And a third of neurologists are saying, I'm not even going to prescribe it due to these risks. 2/3 of neurologists are prescribing this. And I've met some patients who are having some pretty remarkable results. It's an infusion in a clinical setting. It's not a cure. It's not going to restore anything. What we're trying to do, everybody, is mark time so that your loved one will still be in an early enough stage when the next thing comes along to benefit from that. And it's coming. Medicare is going to cover this drug and qualifying PET scans and ongoing MRIs for patients. And it's not going to break the bank of Medicare. Only about 600,000 people will qualify a year. I'm feeling such a sense of urgency about this because look at this. 2,000 people in our country are moving from early stage Alzheimer's to middle stage every single day. We need to get on with this and get this fixed. And we're going to do it. Watch for some news. Gosh, hopefully we'll hear something next year about trontinemab. This one has less than 5% of side effects, so that could really be a game changer. I'm excited about that. I can share with you that when a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or another type of dementia comes across, emotions are going to run really high, everybody, on everybody's part. I'll let you read everything in white for yourself, but I want to speak to denial. We can be in denial as family care partners for the entire journey. I highly recommend against it, everybody. And I will just tell you this, it's going to take care of itself because undeniable stuff is going to start happening in your family. Our loved ones, on the other hand, can only be in denial about dementia of any kind in the earliest stages because denial is a cognitive thought. And once our loved ones are not able to be thinking cognitively anymore, they're not in denial, they're just living their own reality. I think this is a very simple concept, everybody, but I didn't get it for the first 3 years of caring for my family. And once I really understood it and embraced it, it helped my tolerance and my patience. It really helped our relationships in my family. And I sure hope it helps some of you today. All right, caregiving overview, 12 million people doing for their families as I did for mine. We put in almost 20 billion hours of unpaid care every year. We're a force. Here's the bad news. About 75% of us report being concerned about our own health. If any of you think that ice road trucking is the most hazardous occupation on planet Earth, I beg to differ. I think it might be being a family caregiver for somebody or care partner for somebody with dementia, the heartache, the financial burden, the daily load we carry, and certainly the uncertainty of what's to come. Very difficult for us. So self-care, respite, you know what that is? That's just breaks for us so that we can get away from this a little bit. They're very critical. A little bit more about that later. This is what I call the unexpected career. Under daily living, these are all the things we have to pay attention to if we're taking care of somebody with dementia every day. Remember when we used to say during pregnancy, you were eating for two? Well, I thought of myself as thinking for four every single day, me and my 3 loved ones. It's exhausting, I'll be honest with you. And then down at the bottom, the advanced planning, these are the very consequential things we have to pay attention to keep the boat afloat, so to speak. I will share at this time with you just that Alzheimer's disease, most expensive disease on the planet. All right, I don't have time today to go through this word by word with all of you, but especially during November, National Dementia Care Partner Month, it's Caregiver Month in general. I hope all of you who are caring for someone with dementia will read this over and over and over verbatim. I mean, every word, you guys, and say it out loud to yourself so that you will embrace it. I'm going to summarize. We have to exercise to stay fit and eat well and get enough sleep and go to our own doctors. We need to get counseling to manage our stress. We need to be able to delegate. Martyrdom, highly overrated, everybody. Keep the important stuff close to your vest, but let people help you with the laundry and the grocery shopping, etc. Respite. Nobody can do this 24/7. We have to have a break. So I hope that's helpful for some of you. This, ladies and gentlemen, may be, in my opinion, the most important slide of our presentation. And by the way, I'll just mention the dark background is on purpose, everybody. We don't want you to print all of these slides when you get them. It's a lot of slides. But if you're going to print one, I would recommend that it be this one. I have it printed. I'm looking at it right now. It's on my bulletin board in my office, and I read it every single morning as I start my work to remind me why it's so important. We took a survey of people with dementia, and this is what they told us are their quality of life hopes through their journey: to continue to do things I enjoy, to maintain relationships with those important to me, to continue to communicate and interact with others, to laugh often, to feel safe, to feel valued, respected, and included, to continue to be physically active, to have a sense of purpose, to continue to experience new things, and to minimize loneliness and isolation. This is, ladies and gentlemen, our to-do list from our lovies. And I hope that's meaningful for some of you today. A little word about stigma. We talk about it all the time. I don't even know if we know what we're talking about, so I looked it up for all of us. It is a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. With regard to dementia, everybody, let's all pledge together today on this webinar to be a part of the solution and not the problem on this one. Are you with me? Are you with me? I know you are. I know you are, and thank you for that. All right. Thank you. I'm seeing some hearts and some love out there, so that's nice. Thanks, everybody. I have three quick slides. I wish I had more time to deal with all of this today, but these are dementia-friendly skills. Certainly, these are for the caregivers on the session today, but this is also how communities become more dementia-friendly. People with dementia are everywhere. They're at the airport, everybody. They're at the grocery store and the movie theater. The sooner we learn to interact better with them, the better off everyone will be. So let's get started. Communication wise, 100% of everyone I've ever met with any type of dementia is going to ask you the same questions over and over again. I'm about to crack the code. Are you ready? Answer the question cheerfully every single time. They are asking it of you for the first time in their minds. On the flip side of that, we try not to ask them questions. Our voices go up at the end when we ask a question. My dad's shoulders would go all the way to his ears because he knew it was his turn and he might not know what's going on, caused him a lot of anxiousness. We use short sentences and basic words, never baby talk. These are adults. They deserve every ounce of dignity we can give them. We pay attention to our tone. They'll pick up on our impatience every time, and we allow plenty of time for everything. We're living on dementia time. We limit distractions, especially in the dining room and the bathroom. We have meals to ingest and chores to do, not to be a delicate. And we focus on feelings, not facts. Our dad said to me one time, you know, honey, this time last week, your mother and I were in Paris. And I said, Paris is a lovely city. And we left it at that. I think you get it. We never criticize, we never correct, we never challenge, and we never argue. These are people with a brain disease, everybody. We need to cut them some serious slack. Not to mention, you'll never win an argument with a person with dementia because arguing is a cognitive transaction. They're not capable of holding up their end of that, and you're just going to feel crummy about yourself for picking the fight to begin with. Feel free to use a term called fiblets. I coined that one 21 years ago, I believe, and these are just small untruths that kind of help prevent upsets throughout the day. And by the way, upsets are going to occur no matter how perfectly you perform your job as a care partner. Redirecting to pleasant activities when things kind of get upset usually works. Give it a try anyway. And patience, of course, is the name of our game. Interaction wise, we try to stick to a daily routine. It would bore all of us to do the same thing at the same time every day. It's very comforting to a brain with dementia. We create a calm environment, hoping that they will be calmer. Music is a great connector, so use it. We go with the flow, everybody, unless safety is involved. I like to say we go over to their side of the street because they can't come over to ours. I think you get it. We avoid forcing activities. I like to suggest instead. It seems to be a little more palatable. And there's no science behind this one, everybody. This is just a learned experience for me. But I found that an hour for all of us is like 3 hours for them. So if you're about to have a 2 hour Thanksgiving dinner, your lovey just had a 6 hour Thanksgiving dinner, no wonder that there are meltdowns and upsets and fatigue. So make sure you have a plan for having that person, someone assigned to help them get somewhere for some rest, etc. We always monitor interactions with pets and small children. They're great to be around our people, but I've seen leashes pulled too tight, not out of malice, but just a lack of understanding what could happen. We always approach people with dementia from the front to avoid startling them, partly because of that peripheral vision issue. And for safety's sake as well, always we maintain an arm's length if agitation occurs. Keep yourself safe. Very, very, very important. We are flexible and adaptable people. And by the way, I just want to let you know that for those of you who live here in Colorado, I am leading a project at Denver International Airport to make it more dementia friendly. We're entering year 3 of that project next year. We're making some progress, everybody, and we have a thing called the sunflower lanyards. I'm holding one up here. You can get these for free at the customer service desks at Denver International Airport and other airports across the country who are participating. And if you wear this, you wear one and your loved one with dementia wears one. And we're training the staff at the airport to understand that you may need some additional assistance without humiliating the person. It's just a little sunflower thing, symbol. And TSA Cares has a wonderful program. You can call up to 72 hours in advance of travel and arrange for an escort through security to make it easier for you and your loved one with dementia, and you'll never be separated during that process, which can be very, very, a very stressful interaction. Behaviors, I think we've talked about almost all of these. Everybody shadowing. Number 3 is when they want to stick like glue to us, they know they're very dependent on us. Elsie shadowed me for about 6 months. Whenever we were together, I could honestly feel her breath on my neck. Respite for me, for sure. Sundowning is a biorhythm occurrence that happens when the sun starts to set. Some people have very severe sundowning, about 20%. A doctor will need to be involved. But listen, we twirl the blinds so the shadows aren't dancing menacingly on the wall, turn the overhead lights on, turn on lamps and soft music, and try to help our lovies wind down a bit in the afternoon and be a little less anxious. Tearfulness, they're in there, everybody. Listen, they hate it when we treat them like they don't exist. I've actually had people say, I was so mean to my mother today, but it's okay. She won't even remember it tomorrow. Listen, everybody, our loved ones live in the moment because of their memory loss. They are present, they live in the present. We can wound them emotionally in that moment. Sleeplessness, days become nights, nights become days. Suspicion and paranoia are built into the dementia, everybody, so don't take it personally. Unfiltered action, things are going to happen, everybody, because the filter is in our brains in the frontal lobe is damaged in many cases. I can give you examples of that later if you like. Pacing is an anxiety symptom. Always report it to a doctor. Elsie paced for 8 months. We upped her calories, we ripped through some tennis shoes, and people would say, why didn't the doctor just give her something to calm her down? And I just want you to know that fall risk, huge for people with dementia. You can easily create more problems than you're solving. Wandering, ladies and gentlemen, game changer. 60% of our lovies will wander during their journey. When that happens, their safety and security falls directly on our shoulders. This is when many families will make the decision for community residential care. Here's the equation. Anxiety equals discomfort, which equals behavior. So our job, very hard job, by the way, uh, minimize the anxiety to the degree that you can. And thank you, by the way, for all of you who are doing that caregiving right now. Here are all those wonderful resources I promised you. Look at that. These are all free resources in our community. Here are respite resources so that you can get a break. Here are all the wonderful things the Alzheimer's Association can do for you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at the time for the risk reducers, the grand finale today. All right, everybody. I want to explain what's going on here because there are 4 reasons for us to pay particular attention to these risk reducers. First of all, I think it's safe to say that we would all agree that whatever brain function we have at the moment, we'd like to hang on to that, right? And preserve our existing brain function for sure. So, um, doing these 10 things that we're about to talk about can certainly reduce your risk for dementia in general. So there's a reason to pay attention for starts. And by the way, if you have genetic predispositions, let's say you're even a dual carrier of the risk gene, doing these 10 things might very well delay onset for those people with predispositions. And then finally, last but not least, we're learning more about this just in the last couple of years. But even people who have already been diagnosed with dementia, by practicing these 10 things to the best of their ability, may affect progression and keep them in an early stage for longer. So lots of reasons to embrace these things we're about to talk about. Last year was confirmed what we thought we already knew, and that was that 45% of our risk for dementia is due to modifiable factors. Ladies and gentlemen, that's just the best news we've ever had or had for a long time in this field. 55% due to non-modifiable factors. What's your age? What's your race and ethnicity? Are you male or female? And what is your genetic disposition? But look at this, 45% due to modifiable factors. No longer do we need to feel quite so helpless about this subject. So here we go. Everybody ready? Number 1, exercise. Good old cardiovascular exercise. Always check with your doctor before you undergo a cardiovascular regimen to make sure it's safe for your overall health. And as you age, everybody, you have to add weight-bearing exercises, balance and stretching to avoid falling, which of course can cause brain injury. That's another subject we'll talk about in a few minutes. So always check with your doctor first. There have been some studies this year that have recommended some minutes for cardio, etc. I'll let you read that for yourself later. Number 2 is diet. A Mediterranean type diet, high in fruits and vegetables and lean proteins. We believe that we can reduce our lifetime risk for dementia by up to 30%, everybody, just by eating this kind of a diet on a regular basis, avoiding sugary, salty, fatty, and fried foods. Red meat should be an occasional thing, not the staple of our diet. And processed foods, I think you all have heard about this, but not good for the brain. Bacon lovers, I hate to break it to you, but honestly, um, meats like bacon and hot dogs and those kinds of things are really not good for the human brain. Blueberries, blueberries, blueberries. And by the way, strawberries are right up there with them. Great, great, perfect food for our brains. And at our house, we don't say, have you had your blueberries today? We say, have you taken your blueberries today? We take it pretty seriously. All right, sleep. I told you I would get back around to this, everybody. By the way, I think I failed to mention, so I'll do that now, that during sleep, those toxic proteins that may be building up to a toxic level, typically they can be flushed out naturally through good, solid, natural sleep. Very important. When they build up, obviously, for any reason, that's when cognitive impairment ensues. So see these things right here, everybody? And all your other electronic devices, please put them in a room far, far from your sleeping area so you won't be tempted to check in the middle of the night if you get up for a bio break. Make your sleeping area cool and dark. Give your brain every possible opportunity to flush out any of those toxins that might be building up. And always, always consult with your physician before you take any over-the-counter sleep aids to make sure they don't fall in that risk category I mentioned. This is my favorite one, everybody. We now know that we can reduce our lifetime risk for dementia by up to 50%, 50, just by wearing hearing aids when our hearing begins to decline. And 65% of us over 65 will have some hearing loss, by the way. There should be no stigma about wearing hearing aids, everybody. Very, very important. Get cataracts removed if that can be done safely. Think of it this way. Your brain can't possibly process what you never heard or saw to begin with. So discuss all of these things with your doctor. Brain health, heart health, very much connected. If it's good for your heart, it is good for your brain. Try to maintain a healthy weight, everybody. And this is fascinating. Studies recently have connected air pollution with cognitive risk, particularly wildfire smoke. I just went to a 3-hour plenary session about this one. Most toxic type of smoke for your brain. I will always wear a mask when I'm in Los Angeles, and I will always wear a mask here in Colorado during fire season when there is ash and particulate in the air. And I told you I'd get back around to this one, but neuroinflammation, brain inflammation, very important to understand. We believe that we can reduce our lifetime risk for dementia by up to 40%, everybody, just by getting our flu shots every fall, because viral illness is one of the key factors in neuroinflammation, which then increases the risk for a buildup of amyloid and tau in the brain. So be sure and talk to your doctor about any inoculations you are eligible for and would be willing to take to reduce your risk for viral illness to begin with. And then mental health, everybody, depression can be linked with cognitive decline. So many types of depression are now treatable. Be sure and talk to your doctor about that. Manage your stress. We all have it, whether we think we do or not. So meditation, exercise, music, counseling, yoga, whatever works for you. I've discovered grown-up coloring books really calms me down, everybody. All right, number 7, brain injury. Oh my goodness, we have to protect our most precious asset, our brains. Seatbelts, seatbelts, helmets, helmets, when we're doing sports, riding our bikes, etc. You know, we're from Colorado. Most of us on this call, we slide up, down, and around something summer and winter. So always think about your brain as you're doing those fun things. And you never want to go over to a wall and bang your head against it. So if you think you're going to have a really stressful day, throw a helmet on to begin with, I always say. All right, everybody, there is a direct correlation between smoking and Alzheimer's disease. Enough said. I will also hate to be the bearer of bad news for some of you, but a study came out last year from Oxford University, not exactly a shabby institution, right? That said there is no safe amount of alcohol for your brain. I think a good message for today's session would be if you choose to imbibe, moderation, moderation, moderation. All right, number 9, cognitive engagement. We have to keep learning. I'm not worried about all of you. You chose to come to this AARP seminar today. Thank you for that, by the way. Continue to take classes online or in person or even better so you can interact, but online is great. Learn a new language or a musical instrument. And by the way, not all the brain games that you may play online have science behind them. I do them all every day because I just get a kick out of them. But the ones that are exercising your peripheral vision, where you are looking in the center of the screen and then identifying things around, do those first. Those are real science behind those. And then just do yourselves a favor, everybody. And before you invest in brain supplements, we're inundated with advertisements for those. Check with your doctor. I guarantee he or she will have an opinion, as some of those may lack some scientific evidence. Staying socially engaged, we need to shake it up with our fellow humans. We now know that we really need to engage in actual conversation every single day. So try to converse with people. We know volunteers have a 16% lower incidence of dementia later in life. So when you're doing some good for your community, you're also doing some good for your brain. A study was done a few years ago out of Amsterdam. Um, this is fascinating. People who had had an autopsy for some reason after death, and guess what? Found out that they had full-blown Alzheimer's disease, never knew it throughout their life because they had built up cognitive reserve or cognitive resilience. We studied those people, and I think we've covered almost all of these except number 5. Most of those people had complex occupations during their working years, and during their second act of life, they chose purposeful pursuits. Never too late to sign up to enlist to be a cognitive reservist and work on our brains. The bottom line, everybody, think what we could all do for our brain if we just practice these 10 things. We should be doing them anyway for our health. And I'll just leave you with this analogy as we start to wrap up, and I'll take some questions. Hopefully I'll have time for that. But listen, if you think about your best friends in this world, I venture to say there isn't much we wouldn't do for those people, right? I think of my brain as one of my best friends. So even if there's some sacrifice involved, I'm willing to do that for my brain health. And by the way, I will just mention that life is for living. So be sure you have a little fun along the way. Please have a piece of birthday cake on your birthday. I mean, really. But I think this is, I think about the best friend analogy sometimes when I'm tempted to partake of something, but perhaps I shouldn't. Full circle, I want to bring us right back around to where we started, ladies and gentlemen, hope and optimism. I hope you'll all leave today's session understanding how close we are to getting this fixed. I'm so optimistic, I'm going to go ahead and issue you your party invitation for the world. It'll be hosted by moi. I just don't know when it is yet, but promise me you'll all be there. Very exciting. And I'm a summarizer, so I've taken the liberty to list 10 things that I think are some of the most important things from this session. So you can look at it later in list form. And here they are for your reference, everybody. Very neatly in list form. I call them the dementia 10s, the 10 warning signs, the 10 risk factors, the 10 risk reducers. Nice and tidy for you all. And with that, everybody, I just want to thank you all for attending today. Very much appreciate the fact that you're so interested that you came. If you need to reach me, there's a Gmail that you can reach me if you have groups that you'd like me to speak to. And by the way, I just want to mention that the Noble Institute for Healthy Aging at the University of Denver, right here in Denver, hosts me every single month for an online, this exact same talk every single month. Never be more than 30 days till the next one. And here's how you find out when those are happening and register. So I hope to see you. Some of you may want to come around again or refer people to come next time. I'm doing one of these. And with that, I want to thank my wonderful hosts at AARP and Cindy and Pam. Do we have any questions that you want to fire at me? I will stay with you all until the last question is answered. But I know some of you may need to jump at noon. So what do we have, ladies?
I I'm seeing just one question so far, Pam, and it was a question about if you know if GLP-1 reduces brain inflammation.
So listen, everybody, GLP, and let me explain, first of all, that's where that I mentioned Ozempic, and Wegovy, are GLP-1 drugs. I think we've all heard about them. Ozempic is used for diabetes and Wegovy for weight loss treatments. And I will just simply say this, that the scientific community is in year 2 of a clinical trial for Ozempic to see whether or not there are benefits to reducing a buildup of amyloid and tau in the brain with that drug. So no results yet. I believe there is 1 more year to go in that clinical trial, so stay tuned. But anyway, that is under study right now. So we will know that within a year or so. Talk to your doctor about that in the meantime. But I think that kind of out of the box thinking is really interesting. So we continue to look for all kinds of angles on that. So to be determined is my answer. And by the way, obviously losing weight in general tends to reduce people's cholesterol level and blood pressure. So there may be some inherent advantages to that, obviously from a weight loss point of view or managing diabetes. Any other questions that I can handle today?
Did you see any, Pam? I didn't.
No,
I,
there aren't any other questions, but a lot of thank yous.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you all for the thank yous. That very much makes my day, everybody. I hope did everybody learn something? I hope so. Hope so. Thank you so much. I'm scrolling through these too fast to read them all. I may hang along out a little bit after Cindy and read these notes because I really do appreciate your appreciation. So with that, everybody, I would like to thank again my hosts, Cindy and Pam, our wonderful volunteers for AARP. Thanks for helping today. And all my wonderful friends at AARP. And everybody, I hope you have an amazing holiday season. I hope you take care of yourselves, particularly your brains. And with that, I will let you get back to your busy lives. Like I say, I'm going to hang in here just a minute, everybody, and read these nice notes. That will make my day. And thanks, everyone, for coming today. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
And care, of course, at that stage will be needed around the clock, everybody. All right, what's vascular dementia? Number 2 on the hit parade. This is when blood vessel blockages have occurred to our brains. Small strokes, we call them TIAs, or larger strokes, of course. And the size of those strokes, where they're located in the brain, the number of them that are happening will determine how much cognitive impairment is occurring. And then there's dementia with Lewy bodies. This one's in the Parkinson's family. So in addition to memory loss, you'll see more hallucinations, gait imbalance, sleep disturbances, and then there is Parkinson's related dementia. Unfortunately, around 80% of people with Parkinson's disease, if they live long enough with that disease, will develop dementia. And then there is frontotemporal dementia, FTD for short. This one's gotten a lot of buzz in the last year or two because of Bruce Willis's diagnosis. There are 2 types. First type is language related. That's the type he has. And then there's the other one is more behavior related. Not in every case, but in many cases more aggressive behaviors. So I'm always concerned about family care partner safety. A sense of apathy sets in, or a lack of empathy, if you will, and more obsessive compulsive behaviors. In my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, this is the most difficult type of dementia for a family to deal with. This is nerve cell damage in the frontal lobe of our brain, which is right here by our foreheads, and the temporal lobes above and slightly behind our ears. The symptoms generate at an earlier age than Alzheimer's, and the duration of living with this type of dementia is shorter. By the way, just FYI, average for Alzheimer's about a decade or so. And then, of course, you have families like mine, 16, 14, 11 years. Mixed dementia, more common than we ever thought. About 50% of our patients have more than one thing going on. And then at the bottom, particularly as they age, with vascular dementia sometimes being added. And then down at the bottom, I've listed some more sensational types of dementia. CTE is chronic traumatic encephalopathy, most commonly connected to contact sports like football and boxing. Creutzfeldt-Jakob, that's mad cow disease, everybody. Very unusual in the United States. I did see a family 5 years ago with this type of dementia, not from tainted meat. Their entire journey from discovery to death was about 3 months, went very quickly. And Wernicke-Korsakoff, everybody, that's alcoholism-related dementia, just so you know. All right, now we're going to talk about how our noggins work, everybody. Please do let me know if I'm impressing you with my medical jargon this morning. But at any rate, in our brains, we have about 100 billion nerve cells or neurons, and they're creating this branching neuron forest I'm showing you on the slide. I'm very careful never to bring a picture of the real human brain, everybody. It's quite gnarly. Most of these I do are lunch and learns. Some of you may be enjoying your lunch as we speak. It'll put you right off your salad, I'll tell you that for sure. But the synapses or signals are traveling through this neuron forest, and they're creating everything about us that's human. Our movements, our thoughts and feelings, emotions, certainly our memories. In the early stages of various types of dementia, there's just impairment. And something can happen that I nicknamed blue sky moments. Our dad in early middle stage Alzheimer's, on the way to the doctor in the car, recited to me the preamble to the Constitution. An hour later, he didn't know what a sweater was, much less where his sweater was. It really wreaks havoc with us because, as care partners, because we think, wow, everything was so perfectly normal there for a while. In the later stages of dementia, the neurons are actually destroyed and the brain actually shrinks or atrophies in physical size. Now, we're going to switch gears, everybody, and talk about the 10 risk factors for dementia. Unfortunately, 2/3 of all Americans have at least one of these, and many have many more than that. So let's get started with these. Number one, primary risk factor for dementia is age, everybody. Not a doggone thing we can do about that one, right? And I don't know about you all, but I think I'm pretty safe saying this because AARP is my host this morning. I hope as all of everyone on this session today adopts my philosophy, and that is that I am way over apologizing for how old I am. I turned 73 back in May. I can't wait to get on with my life, but I'd sure like to get on with it without dementia. Are you with me, everybody? I know if I could see you all, you'd be nodding. So thank you for that. The number 2 risk factor, everybody, is your general health, your heart health. Oh, thanks. I see some thumbs up on the slide, so thank you for that. Listen, heart health, everybody, your cholesterol really matters here. And hypertension, that's your blood pressure, really matters in this category. Diabetes certainly increases your risk. Type 2 should be avoided if at all possible, and if not, well managed under the treatment of a physician. Neuroinflammation, inflammation to the brain, that one we're going to talk about a little bit later on, everybody. Number 3 is lifestyle factors. Inactivity, that's a lack of exercise, everyone. Poor diet, poor sleep habits and patterns. Obesity, certainly smoking anything, by the way, that goes through your cardiovascular system. Excessive alcohol use, and not treating hearing and sight decline as we age. That one is so important that it has its own section at the end. Ladies, as I teased earlier, we are at the epicenter of the entire topic. 2/3 of all Alzheimer's patients are female. I know what you're thinking. Look back to number 1. We live longer than gentlemen do. That explains it. Well, that's part of it, but we know there's more to it than that. And that's why that gene that was just discovered last year is going to be so important to figuring it out and potentially getting a treatment just for females. Caregivers, 2/3 of all of those are also female for people with dementia. Now that we're in caregiver month, I want to point that out for sure. This next one is so important for me to convey. African Americans are twice as likely to develop dementia as others, and Latinos 1.5 times more at risk. So our outreach to those communities is extremely important. Number 6 is fascinating. A study was done a few years ago, 3 years ago, I think, introducing us to a term called life course factors. And what this tells us is that some of our risk for dementia may have been cast as long ago as our childhoods, particularly through the nutrition we might have experienced. Now, this doesn't bode well for me, everyone. I was born next door in the state of Kansas to a mother who never met a food she couldn't fry. My goodness, I think we ate fried foods 3 times a day back then. Were you raised in a rural or an urban environment, and what might that have meant to the quality of the health care you received as an adolescent? What are your formal education levels throughout your life? And look at this one: poverty, stress, discrimination, risk factors for dementia. Social isolation certainly increases risk. I was very worried about this during the pandemic years. Most of us did a pretty good job of staying connected through this thing called Zoom that we now can't live without. But there were many people truly tucked away. And I will just say that it will be decades, I'm sure, before we fully understand the ramifications of the coronavirus pandemic on our brains in general and our risk for dementia down the line. I will just mention that those studies were started within 30 days of the pandemic being identified back in late 2019. Traumatic brain injury certainly increases our risk. We'll talk more about that one later. Not done with the gene category yet. There's a deterministic mutant gene, everybody, so rare that only 200 families on the whole planet have this gene. You might wonder why I'm even mentioning it, because it's so rare, but this is an interesting story because there's a wonderful family in Colombia, part of a clinical trial we have going on down there. And there is a gentleman in that family. What it means, by the way, to have this gene is that most everyone in the family will develop an Alzheimer's type dementia by 40, 50, or 60 years of age. And there's a gentleman exactly my age, you guys, 73 years old. He's just now beginning to have a little forgetfulness, and he has the mutant gene. So what's been protecting his brain all this time? They found it last year. It's called the renin protein, and it resides in the RLN DNA of our genome. That's big science, everybody. So stay tuned to what that means for the rest of us. That study is going on right now. The gene I want to talk more about today is a risk gene called ApoE4. Now, we could go to a lab or get a kit and find out if we have 1 or 2 copies of this risk gene, which increases our risk for Alzheimer's disease. Nobody's recommending that you go do that, because if you do have 1 or 2 copies, it doesn't guarantee you're going to get Alzheimer's. And if you have 0 copies, you're certainly not off the hook. 1 copy means a 3 times higher risk, by the way, for Alzheimer's, and 2 copies, we call those dual carriers. 60% of those folks will have Alzheimer's by 85. That's only 2 to 3% of folks in the United States, by the way, so it's pretty rare. So I just want you to understand that genes do play a big part in all of this. Now look at number 10, family history. Some people will say, wait a minute, what's the difference between number 9 and number 10? Well, genes are genes, everybody. You're born with them. But family history really matters because families tend to do what? They have the same lifestyle habits. They eat the same thing for dinner every night, and they either go for that walk after dinner or they don't. So I think with regards to numbers 9 and 10 on this slide, I'll just say this: the more people in your immediate family who have some form of dementia, the more you should be paying attention to the entire topic. All right, next we're going to switch gears again, everybody, and talk about the 10 warning signs for dementia. Promise me this, everybody, that you won't leave today's session being what I call the worried well. I know what you're going to do. You're going to say, wow, I've done that, I've done that, I've done that. Of course